Hello, hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. It is Wednesday, isn't it? Yeah, it is Wednesday. My computer's telling me it's Wednesday. How are you doing? Thank you for joining today. Let me just get rid of some of these reminders. I get a million reminders on my computer. I've got a Mac and I've had it for 6 months and I still have no idea what I'm doing with it. I should go on a course on how to use a Mac because I'm sure I could be way more efficient than I am. So hello everyone. So the first thing I'm going to do is what I always do, which is please just let me know that you can actually hear me and that I am not babbling away on mute with my lips moving and no sound coming out. So I know there's always a couple of seconds of delay. Well, seconds is an understatement. It's usually a couple of minutes of delay between where I am and where you are. So please do somebody just pop up and say howdy doody. Hey, great. Sarah 2014, welcome back. Thank you. I'm glad you can hear me. That's awesome. All right. Good morning, Dim. How are you doing? So, as always, we need to fill a little bit of time whilst we wait for everybody to rock up. So, I just saw something very exciting. Oh, I'm not going to ruin it for everybody else, but oh my God. I am so starved of other human company. I'm so sorry I seem overexcited. Right, so why don't we just say hello to each other and introduce where we're coming from. For a while I've been doing a weather thing, but I should probably get over that now. It's definitely winter here and so cold. So I'm going to get over that and I'm going to ask you to say hello, say where you're from, and I don't know, tell me the last thing that you bought on Amazon, or if you have a plan, if you have something in your shopping basket in Amazon that you're waiting to purchase, I would love to know what it is, and I'm going to tell you what mine is. So hello, Seri 2014. I'm sorry, I can't remember where you are coming from. So you have been here before. I do remember you from the other day. So let me know, where are you coming in from, and have you bought something recently on Amazon? Dim K, good morning. So you must be in the States somewhere, I assume, Dim. So, oh yes, you are. I can see down there to 4:30 a.m. You're in Australia. You're in Australia, right? What are you doing on my show at 4:30 a.m. in Australia? I'm blown away, Dim, that I'm worth getting up that early for. I have a very good friend, a childhood friend who lives in Australia, and I barely get to talk to her because there's such a small window. And she's in Sydney as well. I have such a small window of opportunity to talk to her. I literally get to talk to her every 6 months. So I'm so pleased you're here, Dim. That's lovely that you've come to join us. So Daniello, oh, you've got an experience to share. Let you write it here. You're from Brazil. Okay, that sounds ominous, Daniello, but let's go with it. You know, it's no holes barred in Gigi's Amazon interview with Academy and Clinic and whatever this thing is. We've got the Mum 98. Hello, welcome back, the Mum 98. We've definitely seen you before. You're in Cleveland, Ohio. Oh, and you purchased a part for your dishwasher. Oh, the glamour of being a mom, honestly. I've been there. Nathan's back as well from LA. Hello. And you bought a gift card for a friend's birthday. You know what? I love gift cards. I don't think that anybody can underestimate how useful gift cards are, because most of the time people don't buy you what you want. I'd much rather someone spent the hard-earned money that I've put into something on something that they really, really like. So I hope your friend bought themselves something cool, Nathan. Seri from 2014, you're in Mexico. Excellent. Yes. Dim, you've been watching on repeats. Oh gosh, I always worry about how much time people spend kind of looking at my face. Yeah, I wouldn't want to spend that much time looking at my face. But there we go. And we've got Picon 914 from Boston, Massachusetts, and you've got some groceries. You're making use of Amazon Fresh. I used to work for Amazon Fresh. I don't really use it myself because it gets too complicated over here. But yes, Amazon Fresh is very cool, and they've come a very long way in the past couple of years, I think. Okay. Oh, and the Mum, you have your first set of loops today. Okay, so later on today. Cool. Sam Garlic. Hey, okay. Okay, I'll cover your question off in a minute, Sam, or at least I'll try to. I used to know someone called Sam Garlic. Probably not the same Sam Garlic, but I figure that's an unusual name. All right. So still waiting for a few people maybe to rock up. I have to be honest with you, I shut down all of my promotions for this session because the time zone changes just throw out all of the videos that I have created. And rather than create them all over again for 1 week, I just thought, we'll see who shows up and who doesn't. So yes, it is now 5:30 p.m. in the UK because our clocks went backwards, fall back, but I believe in the US that your clocks don't change until the 7th. So at this time of year, it all goes horribly out of sync. And I made a complete hash of it in the springtime and nobody knew what time it was, or at least I had no idea what time it was. So I decided, whatever, I'll live with it. People will show hopefully. And if they don't, oh well, they missed out. Right. So who else have we got? We've got Gustav. Hello, how are you doing? Right. Let's do the intro and we'll see how we get on. I asked everyone to tell me what else you've bought recently on Amazon. I'll share with you, I am going to buy a silk lined beanie hat. The reason why I'm going to buy a silk lined beanie hat, and maybe you care and maybe you don't, is I have curly hair, and when curly hair, or at least when I put on a hat, I end up with completely flat hair. And if my hair looks bad when it's curly, you won't want to see it when it's straight. Trust me, it's not pretty. So I have a silk lined beanie hat in my basket, and I'm terrible. I leave things in my basket for weeks and then I remember I intended to purchase it. But there we go. All right. So on that note, fascinating, I'm sure it was for you. Let's get going. I'm going to introduce myself. I am Gigi and I am the Amazon interview whiz. I was a senior leader, interviewer, hiring manager, and most particularly for you all, bar raiser at Amazon for years. Big difference between a bar raiser and everybody else that does interviewing in Amazon is that if you're a recruiter, let's say, you're only going to interview other recruiters, or you'll be talking to candidates who work within your particular expert area. So you'll probably only be recruiting for product managers or vendor managers or brand managers or finance managers, but there's a very small community of people that you'll be interviewing around. If you're just a normal Amazonian interviewing in your everyday job, which you will do if you become an Amazonian, interviewing will happen to you probably at least once a week. You'll have to run an interview. Again, you're only going to interview around your own particular skills area, maybe one team connected to your team, but it's limited in terms of kind of the scope that you have for interviewing. When you're a bar raiser, you interview anywhere and everywhere. You can interview for tech and non-tech, although you tend to have your own special area. I was mainly non-tech, but I did interview in tech. You can interview on any job family, and you can interview for any country in the world. So I've interviewed, I always do the list, but I'm going to bypass the list today. So I probably interviewed across, I don't know, 25, 30 different job families, and definitely across maybe 8 to 10 different countries. So you have this amazingly broad perspective on the interview process, which you may not realize is hugely diverse. A number of years ago when I started at Amazon, the process was very streamlined. Most teams did pretty much exactly the same thing. Now there's just been an explosion of diversity. So being a bar raiser, I got to see all of that, which gave me a really good inside track to pretty much everything in terms of how interviewing happens at Amazon. I personally have signed off hundreds of Amazonians for hire in Amazon. So I know what it takes to get hired at Amazon. Whilst I was at Amazon, I started to be able to spot the people who had had expert interview preparation coaching from recruiters or other Amazonians. They talk the talk, they know exactly what to say, they know what's expected. And I could see the people that didn't, did a bit of investigation and discovered it's not cheap to get interview preparation. From a coach, $200, $250 an hour, which is great if you can afford it, but not if you can't afford it. I thought I could help by doing something more scalable and accessible. So I built a whole bunch of digital content. So here is my YouTube channel, which obviously you all know, hours and hours of free coaching there. I post daily on LinkedIn, although I've had a couple of days off recently. I'm losing the love with LinkedIn, but we can talk about that another time. And I have my own interview preparation digital academy, where pretty much my course will teach you everything that you need to know to land your job at Amazon. And I'll give you a freebie for that course at the end. So please, please do stay. All right, so this is part of my offering, my vision to try and make Amazon interview expertise accessible to everybody. So how I'm going to run this is today I'm going to do a bit of a two-parter. I'm going to give you a little topic, you know, an area that I know people usually ask me on, and I'll cover that off. So maybe that will touch on the question that you came here to ask me today. And then we'll go into normal Q&A. So for Q&A, please type your questions in the box on the side here. I'll try to pick ones that are useful as possible for everybody. If you have a very specific question about a specific role, I'm probably not going to be able to answer it for you. There are thousands of different job families and roles in Amazon. No one person can know the minutiae of detail for all of them. I'm definitely an expert in strategy, in the leadership principles, in the process, but every single job family down to the minutiae of detail, I'm afraid that's inhuman. So I'm not going to be able to do that for you. But if I can't answer it, I will let you know. What else do I need to tell you? I told you to stay until the end. Don't ask me for generic things. Gigi, I've got a program manager interview in 2 days. Any tips? Sure. An entire YouTube channel full of them. So please don't ask me those questions because they're too vague. So no too vagues and no too specifics. Right. That's what we will do. Let's get going then. So topic of the day is the concept of scope and complexity. I'll try and cover this off in a few minutes rather than go on for too long because some of you won't care too much, but you should, because lack of scope and complexity is one of the biggest reasons why people do not get offers in an Amazon interview, because effectively the examples that they've given don't reflect the scope and complexity of the role that they are going to enter into. And hiring managers want confidence that someone can come into their job and hit the ground running. We can debate whether you should be hiring for potential or passion or any of that stuff. It doesn't matter, because the truth is a hiring manager will want someone who can start contributing to their goals as soon as possible. So you need to find someone who understands working at the scope and complexity and the level of the role that you are hiring for at that point in time. And not being able to demonstrate that is one of the biggest reasons why people don't get hired. So it's almost impossible to predict exactly what scope and complexity your hiring manager and your interviewers are looking for. But what you can do is try and create a sense of scope and complexity in your example that makes it as impressive as possible to maximize your chances of hitting the mark on the scope and complexity that they're looking for. So I think I've got 5 steps to talk you through. So the first thing is do a bit of research. So find out whatever you can about the scope and the complexity of the role. My advice is the best way to do that is to have a think about the role. Usually you're going into a role that is in the discipline area that you've been working in previously. So think about your current role and your discipline area and think about all of the variables that make your current role or that discipline area complicated or hard. Think about those variables and then ask your recruiter to give you some information on those variables. So as an example, I'm a marketer, career marketer before I started this whole gig. And there are things in my role and in the scope of marketing that I know make marketing complex. So things like how much budget you have to manage, how many channels you have to manage, how many products you have to sell, whether they're one-off sales or whether they're subscriptions, how many channels you need to market through, how many countries you need to market through, how many languages you're marketing through, how many people in my team, because I'm a leader. All of these things I know create a level of complexity and scope in my skills area. So those types of questions I would be asking of the recruiter, because the answers they give me back are going to give me a sense of the scope and complexity of that role. And then I can then align my examples to that scope and complexity if possible. And if I can't align them to that scope and complexity, at least I will know that, and I'll be able to drop some little breadcrumbs of cues into my interview so that the interviewer recognizes that I know I can't match the scope and complexity, but I will articulate to them why I think I can scale into the scope and complexity of Amazon. So that's the first thing that you should be thinking about. The second thing you should be thinking about is give reference to the scale of the challenge in your organization. So put it into context. So a couple of examples might be, if you're talking about an example where perhaps, I'm going to use sales because it's the easiest, but you'll have your own equivalent. So for example, maybe you were off forecast in terms of revenue. So you might talk about that there's a risk of X dollars, pesos, pounds, whatever currency in revenue, which reflected 15% of the total revenue forecast for your business in that period. 15% sounds material. It sounds like it has scope and it's important. Or if it's about something else, maybe you could talk about a process issue that was costing time for your organization. So you could talk about you were losing X many hours worth of resource because of this inefficient process, and those hours represented 20% of the total hours available from your population. But really put something into context so I, as the interviewer, get a sense of how big and how important it is, and that I then realize why it is important for you to get on and solve that problem or leverage that opportunity. So that gives me a sense of the scope of the opportunity / challenge. So the third thing then I will tell you is really make sure that you've remembered to explain all of the working parts. When you're doing your preparation, think. Really try and take yourself back to the situation. Talk to ex-colleagues, talk to your partner if they were involved, if you talk to them a lot at the time, but really try and remember every element of what went on. Now, that doesn't mean to say you need to speak about every element in your narrative, but you certainly want to make sure that you speak about all of the material and relevant elements. Don't make the example sound too easy. There are so many times when I've interviewed candidates and they've given me the high level context and wow, it sounded complicated and that I was going to be listening to something that was really nitty and gritty. And then they've just spun through the actions and into the results and made it all sound like it was really easy to solve and fall in place. And you're like, no, that couldn't have been that easy. So don't overlook the opportunity to really help your interviewer understand how hard and how complex the thing was that you were solving. Which then leads me to point number 4. Introduce drama. Use drama where it serves your purpose. Now, obviously, don't put drama in if it takes you down a rabbit hole to catastrophe. You don't do that. But if there's drama involved in your example where you can articulate how you have saved the day, solved the problem, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of drama. It certainly adds to the sense of complexity if there's drama involved in it. And then the last thing I will suggest is that try and give details around the highest level of exposure that you experienced in this particular example. So who were the most important people that you had to deal with and how did you deal with them? Because again, if you're looking for something that suggests scope, something that's important, then senior people getting involved and managing those senior people helps articulate that this was a big, nitty, important problem for your organization. And if there's one thing that introduces complexity, that's very senior people caring a lot about the opportunity or the problem. So do try and think about articulating in your narrative who those big cheeses were that you interacted with. Okay, so that covers off scope and complexity. I hope that's useful to you. Honestly, if I was to give one piece of advice to anybody interviewing at Amazon, and only one piece of advice, it would absolutely be about please do try and nail the scope and complexity. Think about how you can make your examples sound as big and as meaty and as important for your organization as possible. We really want to understand as an interviewer, what was the risk? What would not have happened if you hadn't got involved? And you want to make it feel like that would have been a big loss for your organization if you hadn't got involved. Okay, So that covers off scope and complexity. I hope that was useful. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to your questions. So hopefully that has given you all a little bit of time to ask your questions. So I'm going to head down the list here on the right and see what we have. Before I start though, I was going to have a little sign, or I'll do that for next week. Before we start, I'm going to ask you to just pause for a moment and please press the thumbs up button for this stream. It makes a really, honestly, a massive difference to me in terms of input variables to the YouTube algorithm. If you comment on my videos, if you thumbs up my videos, because that's a clear indicator to YouTube that the content here is good and that people find it valuable. Then my content will surface more and more people will have access to the Amazon Interview Whiz and everything I have to offer. So in return for what I do for you, please do this for me. I'm going to count down from 3 and I'm going to ask you and spend a couple of seconds just asking you to please like the stream. I sang a song on Monday. I'm not sure that's a good idea, but it fills the time. So 3, 2, 1. Please like the stream. Right now, please go press that thumbs up. I might learn to say this in multiple different languages. If you speak a language other than English, please tell me how I say like the stream in your native tongue. But for now, I'll just say it in English. Please give the thumbs up, like the stream. If you're on replay, it still counts when it comes to replay as well. So any of you on replay, please thumbs up, like the stream. And if you go on and watch any of my other videos, please thumbs up, like the stream. It makes a huge difference. Okay, so begging over, I really hate that bit, but it seems that I need to ask people to do it. So I hate it, but hey, I'm not beneath begging, clearly. Right, so why don't we get going? So first of all, I have to put this up because this is one of the best pieces of news that I have had today. Now, I have had a few people contact me today from my academy saying that they've got roles and people in negotiations who I've been helping. So I have had a good day as far as success stories go. But Ashley Green, if there's one success story that makes me happy to see, it's you, because you have consistently been coming to my lives and on my channel for months, right? Months and months and months, and you have an offer. I'm so happy for you, Ashley. Congratulations. Hard work, commitment, focus, and you will get there in the end, and Ashley has proved it. So I'm so proud of you, Ashley. Congratulations. You are very, very welcome. Hard work on your part as well. Oh, well done. So pleased for you. All right, let's keep going. Oh, I'll miss you, Ashley. Gosh, I'll miss you. Right. Let me just see if I can find our first question. All right. Hey, Sam. Right. So you're on to Loop for an SWE role. Not sure I know what an SWE is. There are so many shortens and acronyms for everything that not sure I know what that one is. But what topics can you expect in the interview? Is it all behavioural or otherwise? Well, without knowing exactly what an SWE is, Sam, what I'm going to say to you is, if it's a technical role, I don't know if that's software something or whether it's senior something. If it's a technical role, 2 possible routes. If you're at Loop, chances are if it's a technical role, it'll be a combination of behavioural questions and technical competencies. If it's not a technical role, then it'll be 100% in terms of behavioural questions. What topics should you expect in the interview? Think back to your early rounds, Sam. I hope you wrote down the questions from your early rounds, because it's very, very likely that the leadership principles that they asked you in your early rounds will come back again in your Loop. The reason being is, as a hiring manager, if you have leadership principles that are really, really critical to your role, you test them early on, because if someone can't demonstrate that they're going to raise the bar on those leadership principles, there's no point in wasting interview and resource time moving them through the process if it'll turn out at the end of the day that they don't have the skills to raise the bar on your most important leadership principles. So anything that you were asked early on, Sam, is very likely to come back in your loop. And then, of course, there are all the other leadership principles that your interviewers are going to care about, and those are all buried in your job description. So you need to go through your job description line by line by line by line and look for the language that connects to the leadership principles. Now, if you don't know how to do that, you don't feel confident in how to do that, I do have 2 videos in my live collection. I think I've also got them curated on my home screen, where I do exactly that and deep dive into job descriptions for people live on YouTube here, and I show you exactly how I do it. So go check those out, because that should be a really good guide for you in terms of how you can do that for yourself. I do provide a service where I will do it for you, but go check out the video and see whether that's helpful for you. So that's what I would suggest to you, Sam. Okay. Software engineer. So an SDE, right? An SDE, right? So Sam, now I know what you're talking about. Yes, you will get a combination of behavioural and technical competencies in your loop. Chances are you will probably only get maybe 1, maybe 2 behavioural questions in your loop, because obviously they have to split the time between the competencies and the behavioural stuff. You would have already obviously done a technical round where you've done your coding and things like that. So yeah, go check out your job description. I definitely did an SDE one on one of those live sessions, so go watch that one. Okay, so good luck, Sam. I hope it goes well for you. Oh, hello. Hey, Alika. So you're from Fort Worth. Very cool. You're a tenured Amazonian, and you're here checking out my videos. So I'm flattered. I'm absolutely flattered. Thank you for joining. That's nice. Tenured Amazonians coming along and listening to me. Oh, that's exciting. Genuinely, it is. Okay, what else do we have? Okay. Oh, we've got Kimak's got a loop coming up. Good luck on the 11th of the 11th. Oh, that's Memorial Day here. We have Remembrance Day here on the 11th of the 11th. I don't know if you do that in the US. I think you have a slightly different day of the year where you do that, but here that's Memorial Day. Okay. Guten Tag or Guten Nacht. I don't know how to say good evening. I said good day, good night, but not good evening. Sorry. But Timope, hello, welcome. Okay. Moving on. Yes. Hello, Sari 2014. So the first interview, you've got your loop, and the first interview is the same person that you had your first phone interview with. Is that common? Yep, incredibly common. So usually you will find returning to loop the people who you had your early rounds with, and that's usually the hiring manager, and then usually the hiring manager would have someone in the early loops who was maybe a direct report of theirs or someone very, very close in their team. So yeah, that's completely standard practice. So I would say the same to you, Sari. Think about the leadership principles that they asked you in those early rounds, because they will almost definitely come back. So try and make sure that you've got a different example for those leadership principles when you come back for your loop. Okay. Moving on. All right, so the mom 98. So you're scheduled to meet with an affinity group member. Not sure what you mean by an affinity group member, but it's casual and it's before your last 3 loop interviews. So any suggestions about questions or topics you should discuss with this person? So I think what you're referring to is that some teams set up mean, it used to be a lunch buddy when it was all happening in the office, but they set up an opportunity for you to talk to somebody in the team or closer to the team that isn't actually your interview, but just gives you a chance to maybe meet somebody else in a more relaxed forum and chat with them. So what should you discuss with this person? Anything that's important to you. So it's an opportunity to gather data about the role, if they'll know the role well, the team, the organization, data points that you will need, the MOM 98, to make a decision should they offer you a role in the team. So I don't want to suggest topics to you because what's important to me in a role may not be important to you, but just think about all of the things that you would want to know information on before you said yes to the dress. Do any of you watch Yes to the Dress? Is that a US thing? It's a thing here in the UK where they come up with dresses for brides. Anyway, before you say yes, things that you would want to know, and that's what you should be asking that person about. Okay. Okay, Gusev. So you had a 30-minute telephone interview with a recruiter. So that's a screening. That's a phone screen. Now you're scheduled for a proper interview for 60 minutes with somebody else. What are the steps after that? So Gusev, it will vary enormously between teams. So some teams will have a recruiter phone screen, then a round one, then a round two, then a loop. Other teams will have a recruiter phone screen, a round one, and then straight to loop. Other teams will have a recruiter phone screen, then an online assessment, then a round one, then a round two, and then to loop. There are so many different pathways that now exist in Amazon. So the best thing you can do, Gusev, is just ask your recruiter. Ask your recruiter what the specific process steps are for the particular team and the particular role that you are interviewing for, because it diverges and is so diverse across different teams, across different parts of Amazon. I wouldn't like to guess. So ask your recruiter. Okay. Okay. Just scroll and see if there's any other questions. Okay, Danilo, you've got a long story here. So I'm reading Danilo's story. I'm not sure if there's a question at the end of it, but we'll see. Okay, right. Danilo, I don't think it's useful for me to comment on your individual experience here. I'm not sure how much it would add value to everybody else, and I'm not sure it would add value to you in terms of the next steps that you may or may not want to take. So my suggestion for you is try and talk to your recruiter and see if they, oh, why does this always happen? Why does someone always phone me when I'm in the middle of my lives? And that's my husband, so he knows I'm on this. Oh, God, you just can't get the help these days. Yeah, I'm not sure it's helpful for me to make comment on this for you. So speak to your recruiter would be one thing. And the other thing I would say is all of you who interview at Amazon, if you make it all the way through to loop anyway, will be sent a feedback form where you can provide feedback on the interview process. So Danilo, I would suggest use that as an opportunity to provide feedback. Now, whether that's going to change anything for you personally, I don't know. But if you did have a poor experience, there's a reason why they send feedback forms. They do genuinely want to know. So use it as an opportunity to provide feedback on your experience. Okay, yeah, yes. Good as Avia. Is that it? I love the color of your hair. Totally love the color of your hair. It's gorgeous. Assuming that's you, by the way. Right, so university hires. So yes, Amazon has a graduate recruitment process where they will they'll work with your particular school and they will work their way around schools and do graduate hires. So they tend to function in a very different way. They're done over a series of a couple of days rather than you coming in individually for a loop. They effectively batch interview you and your class or anybody who wants to apply for Amazon, and you'll have interviewers sat behind screens from 7 in the morning until 7 in the evening, literally meeting candidate after candidate after candidate after candidate. So usually they run over a 2-day period where you'll run through, you'll get your interview on day 1, the debrief will happen at the end of the day, and then they'll decide who they want to call back for day 2. That's broadly the experience. So do make sure that you tapped into your careers organization in your university so that you know when Amazon is going to be hiring through your university. I do also have a video about some recommendations as to how graduates should approach the interview process, because of course you don't have the actual business experience behind you. So please do check out that video on my YouTube channel. Hopefully that helps. Okay. Oh, okay, cool. Hey, so Dim, you've got an ops role, manager role loop coming up. You're more than welcome. Fingers crossed. I know we'll all be wishing you well. So good luck. Good luck. Okay, moving on then. Oh, some of you people are telling me, oh yes, great, thank you. I hope I clicked the record the comments on playback on YouTube, and I'll check these out. People are telling me how to say like the stream in different languages. That's so cool. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. All right, yes. Hey, Chris. So you passed the phone screen for a product manager tech, right? PMT. You're welcome. Any recommendation for the writing sample, please do watch my video on the writing sample. I'm very specific and very clear there in terms of how to structure your writing sample and what they are looking for in terms of specificity and clarity. So please go check out the video. To summarize, my recommendation is that people use the STAR format for their writing sample. You don't have to put the headers of situation, task, action, result, but in your actual structure of your narrative, have that in your head as you write down the narrative. You need to be very specific about your data points. So sales didn't go up, sales increased from X to Y, things like that, and then edit. Amazon documents are edited to within an inch of their lives. So get rid of any superfluous language, any hyperbole, get rid of it. It's facts, it's specific, and it's concise. That's my best tips, but please do go check out the video. It will give you more detail. Okay, Krishna. So it's a good question. This is interesting. All right, so you've applied for a few job openings in AWS and you've got 2 interviews scheduled. Should you focus on the job you're passionate and experienced about and decline one which you're not strong at? Well, Krishna, that's up to you. I cannot tell you what to do there. I would say don't narrow your focus. You know, the more opportunities that you have that you're interviewing for, at least statistically speaking, the better your chances are. You know, if you've got 2 bows in your arrow, no. That doesn't work, does it? 2 arrows in your bow, you are, statistically speaking, more likely to hit target. And what I also would say to you, Krishna, is your preparation shouldn't really be any different. At the end of the day, unless they're technically completely different roles, and I mean like technical roles, in which case I'd be wondering how it's possible that you have such diverse technical skills. But broadly speaking, you're going to be being interviewed about the leadership principles. So the examples that you bring can be exactly the same examples. So if it was me, Krishna, I would go for both roles. I would go for them both as hard and as committed and as focused as I possibly could. And then if you get both, that's a great problem to have. I've had a number of my candidates from the Amazon Interview Whiz Academy recently come back with multiple offers, which is amazing. So you want that problem, don't you, Krishna? So if it was me, I would go full throttle on both of them and try and increase my odds. And I would look forward to the problem of having 2 offers. So my fingers crossed for you. I hope you get to those 2 offers. Yeah, Kimac 13. Yeah. Oh, Kimac 13 and the Mum 98 are talking to each other, so that's fine. Right, sorry, I was quiet there. I was in my own head for a second there. I'm just going to look for some more questions. Hey, Dim. So you had your loop scheduled for last week, okay, but you had to ask the RC to reschedule due to a personal family issue. You let them know that you hadn't had time to prepare. Is it okay? Yeah, of course it is, Dim. Life happens. Life happens, and honestly, life happens to all of those Amazonians as well. I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but sometimes Amazonians have to cancel interviews because personal family stuff happens. I was going to use a different word then, but I managed to control myself. I have a potty British mouth, by the way. So it's absolutely fine. Reschedule it, that's fine. One reschedule is never a problem. Two reschedules isn't great, but not the end of the world. If you get to 3 reschedules, I would, as a hiring manager and as a bar raiser, think that this person was mucking us about and suggest to the recruiter that we don't reschedule again. But 1 is honestly, no one's going to bat an eyelid at 1 reschedule. So don't worry about it. And I hope that your personal family issue got sorted. Okay. Okay, yep. Danny Park. All right, here's a good question. So, loop coming up, you've been through the LPs, you believe you share the same values. Nice. You did come up with some situations based on each LP, but when looking at some example questions, you got stuck. Any tips? Well, tip number 1 is learn the skill of reshaping your examples. So, the people that do best at interview are honestly the people that have this skill, and it's a very hard won and learnt skill, and people who are old and craggy like me and have been around for a while tend to be better at it than people with less experience, just because you've done it so many times. But one key skill you might want to try is reshaping your example to try and fit into the question. So not I'm telling you to lie, because I'm definitely not telling you to lie, but imagine where you've got a question where, I don't know, the question was, tell me about a time where you had a really innovative idea for something, but your team didn't want to go along with you. How did you deal with it? Let's say you don't have an example quite like that. You have an example where you came up with a really innovative idea, but after a couple of conversations, you managed to get your team to align to it. Well, pump up the drama. Maybe try and articulate the narrative in terms of thinking a little bit more about those challenges to get your team on side, and deep dive a little bit more into that area where perhaps in your original plan, you wouldn't have intended to talk too much about trying to get your team to align with it. So that's one skill that you can try and work on. The second thing that you can do is you can ask for another question. So I've seen another Amazon interview coach who was never an Amazonian talk in their videos about the fact that you should never ask for another question. That's not true. You absolutely can ask for another question. You shouldn't do it too many times, because if you do it too many times, your interviewers are going to get concerned that you probably don't have the range of examples that they're looking for in terms of being able to consistently and repeatedly perform at a high level in your career history. But once, maybe twice, it's okay to ask for another question. The third thing you can think of doing, and then I would do this one before I ask for another question, is if you have an example that kind of fits the question, but not quite. In fact, this is the first thing I would do in terms of my strategy order. So I've told you all of these in the wrong order. So do this one first, then do the first one I told you second, and then do the second one I told you third. I hope that makes sense. Say to your interviewer, I don't have an example that exactly matches your question, but I do have this example, and give it to them in like 3 or 4 sentences, and then say to them, is that example going to work for you? It might be that the small variation that you've noted isn't important to them, and yes, the example that you've articulated will do them fine. Or it may be that actually, no, the deviation that you are aware of is an important deviation, and then they won't get what they need if you go down that particular example, and they'll say, no, that's probably not going to work for me, in which case at that point you could default to my second suggestion, which was to ask for another question. I hope that helps. You might need to replay that to get the order right, but those are the options that I would suggest for you. Okay. Hey, Big Nelly. Okay, welcome back, Big Nelly. So you have a 60-minute interview coming soon for a technical role. Prior to this, you had no screening call. No, it's not completely unheard of. Some people never even speak to their recruiter until they get an offer, bizarrely, which I find a bit nuts, but it does happen. You filled in a form with an email answering some questions. Anything to infer from this? No. Do you know what? The only thing I would infer from it is that your recruiting team are trying to streamline their process and have as few steps in it as possible. So don't worry about having not done a screening call with your recruiter. In an ideal world though, Big Nelly, if you make it much further on, particularly if you make it through to Loop, try and get access to your recruiter, because what you really want is a prep call from them so that you can absolutely pound them with as many questions as you can that you can't get answers from me on. So sounds like you've got quite a hands-off recruiter process, which some teams do if they're very light on recruiters and they're high volume recruiting, which is forgivable. But there comes a point where as a candidate, you probably want to try and demand a bit more access to your recruiter if you can. So don't worry about it yet. But if you do make it through to Loop, try and get access to your recruiter so you can ask them some core questions. Okay, hope that was useful. Moving on then. Okay, so just having a look to see if there are any more questions. Hey, Namrata, how are you doing? So you've got an interview for next week. Your recruiter told you that the new leadership principles won't come up. That doesn't surprise me in the least. I have not yet come across anybody who has been asked about the new leadership principles. Is it okay for you to ask questions at the end on the 2 new leadership principles? It's absolutely okay for you to ask questions on those leadership principles. I guess my question to you, Namrata, is why do you want to ask questions on those leadership principles? If you genuinely have questions about those new leadership principles because they're important to you, then that's fine. Please do not ask questions on those leadership principles in order to shoehorn in an example that you want to give them about those leadership principles, but you're not going to be able to give them because they're not going to ask you about those leadership principles. I have to be honest with you, there is nothing I hated more than a candidate who asked me a question in order to blatantly share information with me that they want to share and that they feel they didn't share because I didn't ask them the question. Ask questions because you genuinely need and want the answer to that question in order to help you make a decision as to whether this is the job, the manager, the company that you want to work for. Don't ever ask questions because you want an opportunity to tell your story when they haven't asked you for that information. It's a very bad use of question time. Okay, I hope that's helpful, Namrata. Good luck. Right, what other questions do we have? I'm going to momentarily pause. I won't sing again, but earlier on, if you weren't here, I have asked anybody that's been here to please like the stream. It makes a big difference to the algorithm, gives it positive signals that my content is good, and I really do believe my content is good. So please, if you could, in the next couple of minutes, please do like the stream. It makes a massive difference to how my content appears in the algorithm. So please just take a couple of seconds to do that, and I would be very grateful. Okay, moving on to the next question then. Yeah, hey James. I think I was talking about that a little bit earlier on to somebody with some fabulous pink hair. So jealous of that pink hair. I wish I could carry that off. So you've got an interview coming up. You're a uni hire. Curious if the questions would still be behavioural. They will absolutely be behavioural. Yes, they are definitely looking for people that they can coach and can grow into being fantastic Amazonians, but Amazon hires based on the leadership principles. So they're going to have to ask you behavioural questions in order to understand your natural, I won't use the word bias because that's such a loaded question, but your natural proclivity, let's use that, your natural proclivity for the leadership principles. So James, please go check out my video that I was referring to earlier on in the stream in my channel that is focused on grads, because that will give you lots of good tips about how to answer the behavioural questions. Okay, next one. Oh, Omi's back. Hey, Omi, how you doing? Oh, okay, Sam, you need a little bit of explanation as to what I'm talking about, because you're right, I talk the Amazon lingo, I can't help it. So an LP is the leadership principle. Sam, there are 16 Amazon leadership principles. If you want to get a bit of an overview of the basics without kind of watching through all of my videos, you can head to my website, amazoninterviewwiz.com. I've got lots of interview guides in a blog there, and read through those, and that should explain it all to you. So those are the leadership principles. And loop is the final round of interviewing that candidates go through. It goes by many names: loop, panel, final round, but essentially it is a block of interviews. They used to all happen in a single day, but now, as I said, the whole process has diversified a bit. Now you can do them in a day, you can do them in 2 days. I've even heard people do them in 3 days, but it's the final stage where you will meet a number of Amazonians, be interviewed by them, and then that group gets together and does what's called a debrief, discusses their interview experience with you, and then as a group, collectively, they'll finally make a decision as to whether to hire you or not to hire you. So that's what loop is. Loop, panel, final round, all of those things mean the same thing. It's the last stage of interviewing. Need a lexicon, I think. I might create a lexicon somewhere to help deconstruct all of these Amazon terms. What else do we have? Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, because I'm definitely going to get that wrong. So you've got a virtual panel of 230 minutes for a project management internship. Okay, is it weirdly short? Okay, so is it weirdly short? Can't say that I regularly hear people have interviews that are this brief, but it's an internship. So the bar is not going to be as high on an internship as it's going to be for a full-time position. So they can afford to put less resource into the interview process than they would if they were actually hiring you properly as a blue badge. So I'm not shocked by that. It makes some kind of logical sense. What should you expect in terms of role-specific LPs? I cannot tell you that. Please do check your job description, and it should all be in there. Again, as I said earlier, check out the video on my live section, and that will explain to you, or at least demo for you, how you deconstruct your job description. Are internship interviews easier? So are they easier? Ask me, is the bar lower? And I will say, yes, the bar is lower. What they need you to be able to articulate and demonstrate in terms of evidence to get an internship will be less, at a lower bar than is needed for a blue badge hire. Easier? No, because the actual experience is the same. They're going to ask you the same types of questions. The structure will be the same, but the bar will be lower. So I think that's what you were asking me anyway, but I'm just being kind of a bit picky on the language there. So good luck. I hope it goes well for you. Okay. I don't know what an informal loop is, but let's just say you've got a loop with 40 minutes of coding and 20 minutes Q&A. What questions should you ask the interviewer, and do these questions matter? So I think I covered that point a little bit earlier. You have to ask the questions that will make a difference to you. Do these questions matter? No. What questions you ask don't get included in the data set that is used to make a decision as to whether to hire you or not. If you don't ask any questions, that gets included, because everyone's going to be very, very uncomfortable with a candidate who doesn't gather data in order to make a decision. Amazon makes decisions by gathering data. So if a candidate doesn't ask any questions, then they're not a candidate that is gathering data to make a decision, and that's a red flag whether this person is an Amazonian or not. So what questions you ask, if you ask them, do not get gathered as data to make a decision on you because they're not indicative of the leadership principles. But if you don't ask any questions, that will get noted. Ask the questions that matter to you in order to make the best decision for yourself. Okay. All right, we've got about 5 minutes left. Right, so how important is it not to reuse examples? Right, so I do have a video about this. I have a video about everything at this stage. I've got so many. How important is it? Pretty important. I also did, if you go back to, I think it's this session last week, actually, Wednesday last week, I did a whole topic intro on repetition and why you should and shouldn't repeat examples. So please go back and look at that content because it's really important. I'll summarize it briefly, but those other videos will go into more detail. The reason why you want to avoid reusing examples is Amazon is looking for a really good range of data that shows that you consistently and persistently perform at a high level in your career history. If you only ever have a couple of examples that you keep using, they're going to be concerned that, okay, maybe once in a while you come up with some kind of glorious example and you have moments of glory in your role, but they're not looking for people who have moments of glory. They're looking for people who consistently perform at a very high standard. So you want to be able to keep giving them fresh and new examples because then they can see that over and over and over, this person is able to really come up with impressive examples and perform at high standard for their organization. You know, a couple of repeats is not a major issue. The more senior you are, the less you really should be repeating. The more junior you are, the more repeats that they can stomach because you've got less career history to pull from. If you're an entry-level candidate and you've only had a couple of years of experience, then you're not going to have as many high bar examples as someone like me who's been working for 20 odd years at a high level. They would expect me to be able to consistently come up with new and strong examples. So I think in my previous video I give a bit of a range about what I would personally be comfortable with in terms of repeats at the different levels, so do head back and check those out. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Mudassar trainer, you're welcome. Right, so you're looking forward to another SDM related session. Well, I tell you what, if you can think of another topic that you'd like covered off, so I'm just quickly going to pop this one up. Mudassar trainer, if you can think of another topic that you'd like covered off specifically around SDMs, Vivek is always happy to come back and take part. So if you can think of something that he hasn't covered off, put something in a comment on the bottom of that video and I will talk to him about coming back and having another session about it. Okay. What else do we have here? Oh, we've only got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to try and pick one more question from somebody that has not, I haven't answered yet. So, whoop, that did a big jump. Sorry, I'm just quiet. I'm trying to think of one. Right, here we go. I'm just going to cover this off for William briefly because we've only got 1 minute left. Oh, I've realized I've been completely lost in the hiding behind that banner. So some people talk about situational questions and others talk about behavioral questions. Are they interchangeable? Different types of questions. Same thing. It's just different language for the same thing. So the situational question, it's kind of the two sides of the coin. There we go. That's a good analogy. Two sides of the coin. So they ask you a situational question in order to be able to understand your behaviors. So it's the same thing. It's just a different expression of exactly the same thing. Okay. So William, right. So I said I would give you the best freebie on YouTube. Did I say that? Maybe I said that the other day. Anyway, please check out the AmazonInterviewWizAcademy.com. There you will find my Amazon Customer Obsession Leadership Principle Masterclass. That is a massive deep dive into customer obsession. Customer obsession is the most important leadership principle in Amazon. I can guarantee every single one of you, if you make it all the way through the loop, will be asked about customer obsession. So my leadership principle masterclass covers off 3 areas of every single leadership principle. The first is it breaks down the nuances. So I've come up with this concept of facets. So there are four facets to customer obsession. So it will tell you all about that. Second thing it will tell you about is exactly what the interviewer is looking for in your answer. I provide you a roadmap on customer obsession. So that cannot be underestimated in terms of its value. And the final thing it has is a mock interview in it. So you can see me interviewing me and see how it all comes together in interview. Please go and take it totally for free. I won't be following you up with emails. I want you to watch it. I want you to love it. And of course, I want you to invest in the rest of my products or others of my products. But if you don't, at least I know you will definitely get value out of the customer obsession masterclass. So please do go and grab that customer obsession masterclass. Honestly, there is no reason not to. Literally, no reason not to. Right. So on that note, we are done for the day. Thank you very much for joining today. I very much appreciate it. No one mentioned my hair, right? No one mentioned my hair. Now, I know you're not supposed to comment on other people's appearance. Oh, Rachel, got that right? Has just mentioned my fabulous glasses, which I'm very fond of, but no one mentioned my hair. I figured somebody would mention. My hairdresser literally went to town. So, hey ho. Anyway, be safe, look after yourselves. Good luck with your interviews if you have interviews coming up. Any further questions on particular things, please just comment on the videos. I will almost always respond within 24 hours. Thank you for joining. Good luck, be safe, look after yourselves and your families, and hopefully I will see you on Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.